Hello students. In this video, we will be learning about elements or parts of a business letter. You are familiar with official or formal letter writing and different parts of a formal letter. Let's have a look at the elements or parts of a formal letter here. These are the 10 elements which we generally include while writing a formal letter, starting with sender's address, date line, receiver's address, subject line, reference, salutation, body of the letter, complimentary clause, signature block, and enclosures. But a business letter includes some additional elements. I have explained these elements in the next slide. Let's have a look at the elements of a business letter. The elements of business letter include the elements of a formal letter with some additions. The first element of a business letter is heading. Heading is actually the sender's address, which is written on a letterhead. We will explain about letterhead in the next slide in detail. Okay, now coming to the next element is a confidential notation. Third one, reference. Fourth, date line. Fifth, receiver's address. Sixth, attention line. Seventh, subject line. 8th, salutation. 9th, body of the letter. 10, complimentary clause. 11, signature block. 12, postscript. 13th, identification line. Enclosures. And the last one is copy notation. Now you can notice that some elements are compulsory and some elements are optional. The additional elements of a business letter I have highlighted in a different color. Now let's understand what a letterhead actually is. A letterhead basically is a pre-printed paper which comes with the pre-printed name of the organization with its logo and the contact details on a piece of paper, which is used for writing letters. Now this section is usually blank. A sender or a sender can write the content of his letter in this particular section. So when you are using a letterhead, the name of the sender and the address or the contact details of the sender is already printed. So there is no need to write any sender's address when you are using the letterhead of an organization. Alright, now coming to the next part of my talk, that is different. Let's have a look at different elements of letter in detail, especially when they are written and how they are written. Okay, so let's have a look at first, that is heading or the sender's address. If you are writing a official letter or a business letter on a blank page, you don't need to include on a blank page, you need to include sender's address. But if you're writing it on a letterhead, then you don't need to include the sender's address as it is actually printed on the letterhead itself. Alright. Now, when you are writing a sender's address, it should include a concise address of the sender, plus you should keep in mind not to include the name and the designation of the sender. The second element is confidential notation. This is optional. It's only written when you're sharing some confidential information in the letter. And this confidential notation is placed below the heading at the center. Next, it is written in capital letters, just like as shown here. Okay. Now coming to the third element, that is a reference. This section is optional. This element is optional. A reference is provided for filing or keeping the record of the letters and for any future referencing. So suppose if you are sending an inquiry to some organization or to someone, your letter will carry a reference like this, a heading with a reference, then number of inquiry letter, then short form. Now every organization has its own pattern of writing the references. Now this is one way when you are writing a letter, but if you are replying to an inquiry to someone's letter, then the references are written in a different way as shown here. As a sender, you write the reference as our reference, and as a receiver, you will give the reference of the receiver's reference number to whom you are replying to. All right, so that is how a reference is mentioned over here. Now the next element of a letter is a date line. It's a very important element of a letter, and it is written in two styles. Number one, it's American style, where you mention DD, YY. The second style is DD, and YY. Now one thing you notice, we do not use the heading date with the date line, as well as we do not use like first, like 31st. So we don't add ST with the dates. Should avoid it. The fifth element is the inside address or receiver's address. Now a receiver's address is either address to name with the title. For example, if you know who's the receiver, the name of the receiver, so you can say Dr. Kaushal Prasad. Okay, but if you don't know the name of the receiver, but you know the designation of the receiver, you can address your letter to the designation of the receiver. For example, you can say the principal if you don't know the name of the principal. All right, now the third thing is, if you don't know even the name and the designation of the receiver, then you can directly write the name. You can address your letter to the name of the organization along with a concise address in block format. When I say block format, that means we do not use any punctuation and the address is written in one line vertically. Okay, now this is the fifth element. Coming to the next element of a letter is an attention line. This is quite new to you. Attention line is optional. It is written only when you want to share information written in that letter to a specific personnel in that particular organization. For example, you have made an inquiry and you know that there is Mr. XYZ who is handling this particular matter, and you want to share the information with him specifically, then we need to add the attention line here. An attention line is simply written just like this: attention, Miss A.K. Patel. That means this information should be passed on to this particular personnel in that particular organization. Now coming to the next element is the salutation. We usually write respected sir as a salutation, but in a business letter it is alright if you write dear sir, but you write dear sir when your letter is addressed to the name or the designation of the receiver. Then we write a dear sir. But if the inside address addresses to the name of the organization, then we have to write dear sirs. After salutation comes the subject line. Now you must be wondering that we usually write the subject line on the top above the salutation, but here I have mentioned subject line below the salutation. Let me explain first that what is a subject line. Subject line is a shortened expression to indicate the purpose of the letter. You should avoid long sentence. And third most important, a subject line is placed either above or below the salutation. Now let me tell you when it is written below the salutation. It is written below the salutation when the letter has attention line. If the letter doesn't have an attention line, the subject line will be written above the salutation. Okay. Now coming to the next element of a letter, that is body of the letter. Now in a body of the letter, we should usually write 3 paragraphs, minimum 3 paragraphs and maximum 4 paragraphs. The first paragraph is usually called as introductory paragraph, which introduces the purpose of writing the letter. Second paragraph, we call it as a detail paragraph, where we provide the detail which will help you to fulfill the purpose of writing the letter. Now, if the detailed paragraph has a lot of detail, you can break this paragraph into two. And third paragraph is the closing paragraph. A closing paragraph emphasizes the purpose of writing the letter and seeks a particular action from the receiver. Alright, so that is how you should use your body of the letter to develop the content or message that you want to share with your receiver. Number 10 is the complementary clause. A complementary clause a complementary clause will be either yours faithfully if your letter is addressed to the designation and the name of the organization. But if your letter is addressed to the name of the receiver, then the complementary clause will be yours sincerely or sincerely. Moving on to the next element is the signature block. After yours faithfully, we add up the signature block, which includes signature of the sender, name of the sender, and designation of the sender. Alright, now moving on to the next element of business letter, that is a postscript. Now, postscript is optional. Suppose you have already written the letter and you do recall that you missed to add something in the information. Okay, so postscript is optional. Postscript is written for adding information to the main content. Suppose you have prepared the main body of the letter and you forgot something to add and you want to give an additional information, you can write it as PS, please mail me your new address. So this is an additional information you might seek or you might want to give. But you have missed writing in the main body of the letter. You can include it as PS, that is postscript. Okay. Now after this, the 30th element is identification line. Sometimes the person who writes the letter is the one who dictates, and identification line is included to provide a reference to the person who dictated and reference of the person who typed it. It is written as NHG. That means NHG has dictated is a name or initial of the person who has dictated the letter, and PD is the initial of a person who has typed the letter. So this is just for the sake of a reference, so that an accountability can be given to the person who has dictated and typed it. Now coming to the next element is enclosures. Enclosures we include in order to enlist the attached documents. An enclosure can be written as ENC/ENCL. You can use this short form for enlisting the attached documents. If the attached documents are more than one, then you need to number the list of the documents. The last element of a business letter is a copy notation. And a copy notation is written to circulate information or circulate that letter among other members of an organization, especially if you want that this letter should be given to more than one individual in an organization, then you need to add a copy notation, and it is written as follows: CC, principal and registrar. So might be somebody else has received a letter in your organization, but if the person intends to circulate that letter to more than one person, then we include that into the CC. So these are different 15 elements of a business letter. We will discuss about the format of a letter, that is how to place these elements in our format, in the next video. Thank you so much for your patient hearing.